Um, Hello to the void. I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot recently, and that's my voice and self-esteem after detransition. So, for the past couple years, since I've detransitioned, I really haven't cared much about my voice, how other people perceive me. I went through a really rough patch from about 2019 through 2021, I would say. And then last year I started to feel a lot better, but it wasn't really related to my appearance. And actually, I would say my self esteem has been pretty high, right? Like, I don't look in the mirror that much. I don't really care. And I think that's healthy. I think it's good not to care and not to be very involved in your appearance. And so I've kind of been taken aback by my own feelings recently. So I don't know when I made my little introduction video, probably about a month ago. Um, I hadn't heard myself speak in a long time. And it was actually probably within like a couple days before I decided, hey, I'm gonna like make a YouTube video or whatever. I was sitting with my sister and she was showing me some old videos. We have a dog of ours recently died. He was very old. He was 17 and a half. It was a long time coming. And so I wasn't super, upset by that or anything. Um, but my sister was watching some old clips and videos that she has of him. And it was just a random one that she played, but I was in it. And I heard my voice for the first time in like years. I mean, honestly, probably the last time I heard my voice was over walkie talkies when I worked at a clothing store. Probably like 2018. I mean, I quit that job in 2019, but the last time I remember hearing my voice over the walkie talkies was in 2018. And that's when I was still transitioned. I mean, I had started thinking about things, but I was still socially transitioned, right? Um, and so I was happy to hear my voice and how deep it was at that point. But uh, into the intervening like 5 years, I guess, I've never heard myself talk. And when I heard that clip of me just talking to the dog, I was like shocked. I was like, is that my voice? Um, since I've detransitioned, I mean, call it delusion, whatever. Since I just think of myself as female now, I kind of thought that my voice was passably female. I mean, I didn't really want to know, but something else that's happened in that time period is I've gotten a lot friendlier. Um, Something else that's happened in that time period is that I've gotten a lot friendlier. And I'm more open to talking to strangers. Just walking down the street, I make more small talk. I'm not made nervous or uncomfortable by talking to people who I don't know. And part of that, I thought I sounded female. Not female, but I thought I sounded neutral enough that you look at me, you see that I'm female. I mean, yes, I look masculine in the sense of like aesthetically or stylistically and having short hair and stuff like that. But I thought I looked female enough and sounded female or neutral-ish enough that people wouldn't hear my voice and be taken aback by it, right? I guess that's the best way to put it. And hearing myself speak kind of shook me. Um, and when I started recording clips, thinking about posting a video, part of that was I was trying to actually confirm to myself that that's what I actually sound like. Um, because sometimes when I was still, trying to be perceived as male, I would talk in a way that was, I guess, deeper, or I thought maybe would sound more natural. Um, if you hear trans identified females speaking, you will hear their pronunciation. What is it called? Syntax. What is it? Like the tones of your voice is, they will typically still be very feminine, right? They'll go up and down a lot versus speaking in a flat tone. And so I would try to, flatten my tone, but I just didn't realize that actually I still sound, I don't know if I sound male. I mean, part of that might still just be in my head. Um, but the reason that this has been something I've been thinking about recently is because I thought I was over it and I thought I didn't care, right? Um, if you've ever interacted with me on people's live streams and whatever, other feminists will know one of my favorite things to say is it's okay to be ugly. And if you don't know who Dylan C is, she's a detransitioner, and I don't think she's made a video in quite a while, but I still recommend checking out her channel. It's great. She's great. She really was, I don't know if inspiring is the right word to use, but her videos are relatable to me. They're comforting to me. I think I may have seen some of her videos before. I actually transitioned initially when I watched some stuff by detransitioners at that time, just to try to scope out what that looks like and like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, how bad is it going to be? Um, I liked her then. I liked her when I actually detransitioned. I like her now. Um, like I said, I don't think she's still around on her account, but I recommend that you watch her videos if you're interested. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just didn't think I cared. I thought it's fine, right? I don't have to be attractive. That has nothing to do with any of your other characteristics. And like picking that apart was a big thing that helped me pick apart my ideas about gender and how I felt about it, and sort of working through that to deconstruct, the things that had set off and sustained my dysphoria. Um, and I guess I just thought I was beyond it, basically, is what I'm saying. I thought I was better than feeling bad about myself or something. And now it's just in my head all the time. Like when I go for walks, when I talk to people I don't know. Like I've been whispering a lot. It's weird. I don't plan to do it, but I do it. Like when I don't feel like I have to be part of the conversation. If my sister is talking to something or whatever, I might just say things, quietly, or sometimes actually in a whisper, which is a little embarrassing that I do that, but I do it sometimes. And it's just been bothering me. Like it shouldn't bother me, but it bothers me that I can't. This is something I can't hide. I can't change it. I guess I could voice train, um, but that would almost like I almost feel like that would go against my morals or something to try and change this part of me just because it's not appealing to other people or it makes other people think I'm like unattractive or gross or whatever, right? Um, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with it, and I'm uncomfortable with the fact that I'm uncomfortable with it. It is the next day. um, so I wanted to talk more generally about self-esteem and detransition. I know I just spent the first half of the video talking about my voice and how I feel about it, but so I guess I'll start with the most important thing. It's not normal to like love yourself. I don't know why people say that. I don't know why it's so heavily promoted, other than, I guess, to like make you think that like your self esteem isn't good enough and you need to work on it and like, you know, start using better help or whatever, right? Um, you know, especially when it comes to appearance, right? So you probably don't think you're attractive, right? That's not normal to think you're attractive any more than it would be normal to think that like your sister is attractive or your mom, right? Because like those are not people you should be attracted to. And yes, there's a difference between seeing somebody as attractive and seeing someone as beautiful in a more neutral sense, but there's not that much of a difference. And, maybe your sister is beautiful and maybe you notice that every once in a while. Maybe she gets dressed up for a special event and you think, oh, wow, my sister's actually really pretty or whatever. But you're not going to think that regularly. You're not going to like look at her when she gets up in the morning, be like, wow, my sister is beautiful. You probably don't think she's particularly pretty or attractive at all, right? Because you shouldn't. And there's no reason that you would see yourself that way either, right? Um, Also, of course, you're going to notice all your own flaws, right? Nobody else is standing an inch away from you the way that a lot of us, especially teenage girls, will stand 1 inch from the mirror and like inspect their skin and see all their pores and stuff and shit like that, where it's just nobody else is looking at you like that. And if you looked at somebody who you think is beautiful and attractive like that, you probably would see the same things, right? It's it's just not a thing, right? Um, so I'm, as you might guess, I'm a big fan of body neutrality. I just think it's more normal. Um, you just, it's not normal to like look at yourself and think you're hot shit. At the same time, it's not great if you're like inspecting yourself in the mirror and stuff, right? And so my idea of good self-esteem is just not being obsessed with yourself. Um, I guess that phrasing is a little harsh. I don't mean to be like, oh, you're obsessed with yourself if you have poor self-esteem or whatever, even if you kind of are in a sense. I think we would all be happier if we lived in a house with no mirrors and just didn't see ourselves so much as we do. I think that's a big reason that social media is bad for people, like generally speaking, and lowers people's self esteem, is because they see themselves so much, as well as seeing other people and seeing other people at their best and like edited and filtered and like wearing makeup and all that kind of stuff. It's just like not good for you. Um, and I think that's part of why transition helped me and helped me to feel better, because men are just under so much less pressure to bring themselves up to a very high level of attractiveness. Um, I would say the moment or the period of time when transition helped me the most was when I just shaved my head and I just like didn't care. Um, Initially, when I transitioned, I still had kind of a longer haircut and stuff like that. And when my hair started to fall out, I really was like upset about it, even though I expected it. I knew it was going to happen. All the men in my family bald. And, I thought I was okay with it. And when it actually started to happen, I was like, oh. Um, Especially because it happened really quickly for me. My hairline started to recede visibly within like 6 months, because that just runs in my family. I had a cousin who started balding in high school, and so I just knew, right? I knew I was going to bald, and I thought I had prepared myself for it, but when it actually started to happen, I kind of freaked out. Um, it never actually got to that much of a point. Like, I don't have a bald spot or anything like that. I just have a receded hairline. As you can see, well, maybe you can't see super well. Um, since I recently recolored my hair, so my baby hairs are kind of darker. It's not as bad as this side. On this side, I mean. It's worse on that side. This side isn't as bad as this side. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's not that bad, but I thought it was horrible when it was happening because that's, fitting in with today's topic. That's how we all feel when something is wrong with us. We all think it's worse than it actually is or how other people see it. Um, my hairline actually is fine. It's actually not something I think about anymore. There's something to be said for the life men are allowed to lead. There's that ability to just kind of check out from a lot of the standards that women are held to. And this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, right? When, liberal feminists or just anyone in general will point to men who, do their hair and, dress up really nicely, and some of them wear makeup and whatever, and point to that and say, see, that's fine, right? This is equality. And it's like, yeah, if all men had to do that, that would be equality, but here is the difference between equality and liberation, right? Yes, you can equally oppress everybody and you can put the social pressure on men to look better and care more about themselves and have, a worse opinion of themselves basically. And that is equal, and now men and women are under the same standard, but that's kind of fucked up, right? Um, I know that's sort of started to happen. Um, there has been more pressure on men, especially over the last decade, to start improving their appearance and hold themselves to a higher standard, and I really hate that. um, that's just not what I want in the world. I don't want everybody to be equally oppressed and have equally low self-esteem, right? I would like women to not be oppressed and to be able to be lazy if they want to and stuff. But as I was saying, there's still room for men to just shave their heads and be not necessarily slovenly, but kind of close to that, right? As a guy, right? If you shower, if you wear clothes that aren't dirty, good for you, right? Whereas women are, our natural state isn't good enough. Just being clean isn't good enough. And I think that really affects us. And that's one of that's one of the appeals of being a man. That's one of the appeals of transition is not being held to those standards where even if it doesn't improve your self-esteem to transition as people say it will, you still kind of get that boost just from being held to a lower standard and being able to just walk out of the house and not have people think that you're not taking care of yourself because you're not wearing makeup or dressing up or whatever. I know a lot of women continue to deal with dysphoria after they detransition. Um, Personally, I would say I don't. But and this is really tricky to talk about. I don't really want to say anything that's gonna be too much of a hot take here. But first of all, obviously, it's true that of people who transition, more of them are gonna have mental health problems or whatever, right? Um, I have some opinions about that as well, which is that if more than half of your population could be diagnosed with a mental illness, then clearly the problem is the environment and not the individuals. And I think our whole model for it is complete bullshit. But regardless, um, more likely to feel bad and struggle emotionally, let's say. And for me, I think one of the big things that has helped me really change who I am on a pretty fundamental level is I've held on to a lot of the things that I gained from transition. And I know that's really hard. especially if you regret transitioning, a lot, and maybe you had surgeries that you regret, or you've developed health problems from hormone use and stuff like that, where it's really hard to see anything that happened in a positive light. Um, but for me, I did get a lot out of transition. I got a lot of social skills out of transition, confidence that allowed me to realize that, hey, I can be friendly, I can be sociable, I can hold down a job, I can, do these things. And it's not that I think, testosterone or transitioning gave me those abilities. It was almost like me convincing myself that I had them because, that's what you hear about transition. And I also saw it as sort of a last ditch like thing. It was a last ditch attempt to have a normal life for me. Because up until that point, I had really just like not been able to do anything. I quit going to school at a young age, and I just lived with my mom and was miserable. And like, there was a lot of pressure on multiple fronts for me to like apply for disability. If you don't know, in the US, there's a program where if you get on disability before age 26, you are allowed to have a savings account where you can save up to $100,000. Whereas if you're over 26 when you're approved for disability, you can't have more than $2,000 in any bank account or they cut your benefits off. So that led to just an enormous amount of pressure because I was in my early 20s. And that led to an enormous amount of pressure on me to start my application process because it can take years to get on disability. I think typically it's 2 to 4 years, and with mental illness, you're always going to be rejected at least like 2 or 3 times. It's this whole nightmare process, right? And I just didn't, I felt like I hadn't really tried yet, right? I felt like, I need to do this. I need to get a job. I need to see if I can do this because if I spend the rest of my life, once you're on disability, it's really hard to get off. Um, you can't work more than 10 hours a week. If you do, they will take your benefits away, right? And that's really scary because, as I said, it literally takes years to get on disability. Um, and so you don't want to risk losing it, right? You don't want to take the chance. If you think, oh, maybe I can do this, maybe I'm better enough, maybe I can get a job. But what if, right? What if I can't? What if I get this job, I lose my benefits, and then I lose the job because it turns out I can't do it, and now I don't have any income. I might end up homeless, right? And this is all, it's really scary. And so, I felt just like, I have to try, right? I have to try now because if I don't try now, I'm not going to try later, especially if I'm on disability, right? So I just, I was at this like, point in my life where I had to make a big decision, and I had dealt with dysphoria since adolescence. The thing with me is I was not a dysphoric child, even though I was gender nonconforming as a child. Um, but it's just not something I thought about a lot. I wore boys' clothes and whatever, but I just I didn't really feel dysphoric until I was a teenager, and I developed all these other issues that led to dysphoria being an outlet for those issues, right? All sort of the typical stuff, the depression, the eating disorder, the things that most kids who transition, or at least most adolescents who transition, deal with. Um, and it's an outlet for that, right? It's a very similar feeling to the feeling that drives you to want to lose weight if you have an eating disorder. The feeling that would drive you to want to self harm, right? It's a very acute, particular feeling of sort of disgust and anxiety that needs some kind of outlet. And that's why you see these same people transitioning who have all these other issues, right? because it's basically the same core feeling that you have. You're just interpreting it and expressing it in a different way. Um, anyway, as I was saying, right? Um, for for women who still deal with dysphoria, it can be hard to hold on to the things that helped alleviate dysphoria. Now, I will say there are some people who they transition and it doesn't help, right? They're still dysphoric for whatever reason. Maybe it's their dysphoria is like highly focused on, certain physical things, right? That don't change when you're on hormones. But I think it can also be hard because you kind of are in there's no good camp for like, hey, let's keep the lessons we've learned from transition, right? Some people who still are like sort of pro trans, they just say, oh, I made a mistake, whatever. Then it's like, well, you were never trans to begin with, so you can't. Got dirt on my screen here, whatever. Um, you can't say you were trans or hold on to that experience because you're not supposed to say you were trans. You're supposed to say, oh, I made a mistake. I was never trans to begin with, right? Because if I was really trans, then, I wouldn't have detransitioned or whatever. And with radical feminism and that, gender critical associated area, the different types of people who end up there, um, the dislike of transition is very strong, obviously, and there's this almost belief, or you get the impression from people that if you say anything positive about your experience or about the things you got from transitioning, like, they don't want to hear it, right? It's all evil, it's all terrible, and like, yes, I don't think transition is the right way to deal with these emotions or with this problem, but I can still say, well, I like those years weren't a waste of my life. Um, I got a lot out of it. I got a lot of confidence, as I said. I got a lot of social ability and ability to talk to men in particular, but everybody to a lesser extent. I learned that like I can do things. There's a big thing with women in the workplace where nobody wants to tell them when they're doing a bad job, and personally, from my experience, it is my belief that this is a big part of the pay gap, is that women aren't mentored, and they aren't told when they're doing something wrong, right? Whereas when I got my job when I was trans, right, one of the first things that happened was I was working on something, and one of my coworkers came up to me and said, "That looks terrible. Do it again." Right? Which you never hear that as a woman, and like it kind of took me aback, but it didn't take very long for me to improve really drastically, and I don't think I would have improved as much or as quickly if nobody had been willing to like tell me that, like, no, you're doing a bad job. Do it again. Do it like this. Do it better. And that really like kind of changed how I view a lot of things in life and how I view skills. And I had never had that experience, and I thought like if I'm bad at something, I'm just bad at something, which I know that's a bad attitude, right? But that is how I felt. Um, I am much less afraid of men than I used to be. I was terrified of men as like a teenager. Um, and that's pretty much just went away because when I was like perceived as male, like my friends were men and I talked to men, and like very quickly I was like, oh, like this is fine, like men are fine. Um, they're like human beings. And like there's no need to like be afraid of them or to think they're gonna like have weird explicit conversations around you like if you don't bring that kind of stuff up. Um, and just like a general confidence, a general feeling that like actually I'm a normal person. Um, it's nice, and like I realized that those are the things that alleviated my dysphoria, right? It wasn't really physical, it was social, it was a social confidence. Um, it was like a matter of perception, really. And just generally, like, I realized that, like, gender is bullshit, basically, right? It's all just socialized bullshit, you know. You're taught to be a certain way, to feel a certain way, to think a certain way about yourself and about other people. And it's just not true, really. Like, yes, there are physical differences. Yes, hormones affect behavior, but like not to the extent that is commonly believed. You know, I think about it almost like, you know, with your dog, basically. Like, yes, you know your dog is male or female. Yes, you know that male dogs are more prone to being aggressive or whatever. But, like, it's not to the point where when you see a dog, you see a man dog or a woman dog. You know, it's just a fucking dog, right? And your dog is your dog. And, you know, yes, being male or female can affect some things, but, like, overall, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal unless you make it a big deal. Um, and it gave me a much better outlook towards other people, particularly towards myself, towards life. And incorporating that into who I am, I think, is part of the reason that I don't really feel dysphoric anymore. Because I don't see women that way. I don't see women as being this other creature compared to men. Um, you know, and I know a lot of like feminists and stuff will like fucking roll their eyes at this, but like honestly, I just see people as people. Um, I see people as a person first and a man or a woman second, or not at all, really. Um, you know, I do understand the need for women's spaces and stuff like that. This isn't an argument against that, but it's just saying that like if you still hold these ideas of gender in your head and perceive them to be real and important, you're gonna keep feeling dysphoric probably. Um, because nobody feels themselves primarily as a man or a woman really. You're a person, right? You don't know anything else. And if you're trying to fit yourself into this box, even if you've taken some of the features of the box away, like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to wear makeup, I don't have to wear women's clothes or whatever. But if you still see it as such a deep fundamental difference, I think it would be really hard not to continue to feel dysphoric about it because on some level you're always going to be like, well, I'm not a woman, I'm a person, I'm me first, and woman is this other thing. And like, and sexism is always going to play a role, right? And it's always going to make you uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable. um but that's other people, right? That's the way you're treated, and it should make you upset. It should definitely make you angry. It should make you want to change it. But if you aren't holding those ideas inside yourself as well as experiencing them outside, it is easier to deal with, right? You know, when I'm treated a certain way for being female, I can, you know, go home and be like, oh, you know, can you believe this happened and blah, 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 and this person, whatever, versus thinking, oh, I'm being treated like a woman and I don't like it, therefore, you know, am I really a woman or whatever? You know, that's the kind of thing that leads to transition, is this belief that women should like the way that they're treated, which is super fucked up, right? Nobody likes it. Some people lean into it more than others, right? You know, a lot of women try to fit in with the roles or whatever, but that doesn't mean that they like being treated in sexist ways. Um, and they shouldn't, and you shouldn't either, but that doesn't make you a man just because you hate the roles assigned to you, right? that should motivate you to want to get rid of those rules and to want to, tear down the system or whatever. So, one other thing that I just wanted to mention, I'm realizing that this video is getting really long, and a lot of people don't want to watch long video. Not that, for the two people who maybe click on this, um, the whole mutilation thing, I hate that. If you feel that way, if you're detransitioned and you feel like you're mutilated or, your body's been ruined or whatever, you do you, right? I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I don't think it's a healthy way to feel, but that doesn't mean that you aren't allowed to feel that way. I don't feel that way, and when people who aren't detransitioned say things like that about our bodies, it really aggravates me. I'm not somebody who says the word offended a lot, but that offends me. Um, it just like, I don't feel that way about myself, and yes, some people do feel that way about themselves, and that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, it may be more or less justified, right? If you had a heart attack because of your testosterone use, well, okay, you can call your body ruined, and if that happened to me, I might call my body ruined too, but if it, whatever. I'm not going to tell other people how to feel. I'm just going to say how I feel about it, which is that I don't feel that way at all. My body works, my body functions, I like my body just fine, it does what it needs to do. I don't think it's good to try and rely on your body for aesthetic pleasure, like, seeing yourself as beautiful and stuff like that. I don't think that's important. And in fact, I think that's damaging even to people who, do see themselves that way and think, oh, I look really great or whatever. Like, fine. But I don't think that attitude is good for you. Um, my body does what it needs to do. I am definitely masculinized. I don't see that as my body being ruined. If a man doesn't want to have sex with me because I'm masculine, then he cannot have sex with me. Like, this isn't. I just don't see it as that big a deal, honestly. And, if I didn't want to be masculinized, if I found that to be super upsetting, I would not have transitioned in the first place. So, obviously it doesn't really bother me that much. Um, and I just find it's just rude. Like, it's just rude. Like, don't say that about people. Like, if you aren't detransitioned and you're calling detransitioners mutilated and ruined and oh, it's so horrible that we're ugly now and people don't want to have sex with us, and surely, nothing worse could happen to a woman than not being seen as a sex object, I guess. I mean, shut up. I shouldn't have said that, but I'm not going to cut it out because that's how I feel about it. My body's fine. Okay, I like my body. It's good. It's hairy. It's manly. And, lots of men have hairy, manly bodies too. And, they're not seen as disgusting. Why am I being held to this standard of, like, if I'm not beautiful in the female way and, like, people who are attracted to women don't want to have sex with me, well, then I guess my life is worthless. Like, I have other stuff going on. We all do. And, like, putting outsized priority on being attractive is not a way to be happy, right? Like, yeah, sure, it's nice. It's nice to have sex, right? It's nice to be seen as attractive sometimes, but, like, it's not the only thing in life. And if you don't have that, you might as well go sit in the corner and die, right? Like, I am happy with everything in my life pretty much at this point. I have a family that I love. I love spending time with them. I'm taking better care of my health than I probably ever have. I enjoy myself. I love reading. I love learning about history. I've been, well, I kind of haven't in a while, but I was taking a math class and I'm trying to do that again because math is something that I've been, not as good at for most of my life. And, I find all of these things satisfying, right? have some friends that I talk to, right? And what else do I really need? Like, nobody has everything in life, and like not having, you know, somebody to have sex with is like not world ending. It's not terrible. And I find like the whole premise around the way detrans women are sometimes talked about among gender critical people to be really disgusting and really messed up, and really anti feminist and like sexist to suggest that if a woman isn't beautiful and attractive to other people, that her life is worthless, right? I just wanted to say that um, it is what it is. If anybody actually watches this, God bless you. Um, if one person sees this and gets anything out of it, I will be very happy about that. So, goodbye for now. Hopefully, I'll make another video at some point in less than a month. We'll see. Thank you if you did watch, and goodbye.